Now, right now, there are a lot of headlines around gas prices in the U.S. are as high as they've been in a decade, rolling blackouts, Lebanon out of electricity, the Chinese with shortages everywhere, and saying as a consequence, okay, we need to produce more coal right now. Can we have capitalism as it exists today? Is it compatible with an optimistic path in how we respond to climate?
Two things. We cannot have capitalism in a collapsed world, first of all. In a world where fires, inundations, floods, droughts, mass movements of people that will cause huge disturbance. That's actually the scenario we need to avoid. So that's just the first point. That's not, then you would need to have not a free market economy, because it wouldn't work anymore because of the huge disturbance that we would see on food production, on water, on our coastlines, on our infrastructure, and the burden it would have on the public purse in terms of the economy. We just come through COVID and we've seen the burden. What we borrowed to inject into the economy for health and for sustaining the economy, that's but a small overture compared to what we would need to do for climate change. So that's the first point. Second point, yes, absolutely. And the early birds get the worm here. There are smaller economies, admittedly, that have made significant transitions already. And frankly, they're sitting pretty well. But it's important to recognize that coal-dependent countries, oil-dependent countries, that's not easy, but it will be about being smart about that transition. And we're seeing even some big hydrocarbon producers making those moves into that next economy that we need to reach. And frankly, innovation is going so fast. If we had had this conversation 5-6 years ago, no one would have thought that concentrated solar or PV would be at the prices that we have today.
That's right.
It's amazing. And now, in fact, these technologies are beginning to compete very well. I'm right now sitting in Denmark, where, because of the high windmill investments that we have, there are many days where we have more more energy than we can use because of the wind velocity in this country. So I think it is about making smart investment, and it is about, yes, industry leaning in, but also government setting the guardrails to ensure that industry will lean in.
Now, there's a lot of talk whenever we talk about climate change of 1.5 degrees centigrade. And again, we're not on a pathway to that. We're not close. The most optimistic scenarios don't get us there. But what was the magic behind 1.5? Why was that such a significant place for the world to try to coalesce?
I think because over 30 years, the IPCC, this panel of climate scientists, have told us with ever greater precision what most of us, can survive at in terms of the world as we know it. And when we look at 1.5 even, we are beginning to understand, because right now we're 1.2, isn't it? And when we look at 1.5, we're beginning to understand that actually our world will change. The fires we're seeing in California, the fires we saw in Southern Europe, etc., this is not normal. This is the new normal. But also understanding then at which points, because sea level rise will happen, but happens slowly as the ice cap melts, as the sea ice melts. So therefore, understanding at what point do countries as we know them and coastlines as we know them no longer retain the shape and that we know. And therefore, we need to understand that much of the economic might of the world is actually coastal based. Think the US, think Europe, think Asia. Where do we have our economic muscle? It is obviously harbor of ocean-facing cities. So understanding that is something that we need to take into account. And then small lying, especially atoll states in the Pacific and in the Caribbean and elsewhere, well, not atolls in the Caribbean, but atolls in the Pacific, these countries disappear at below 1.5. And so that has been the moral tone that was set since Copenhagen by the small island developing states, that they may be small in size, in terrestrial size, they are massive in terms of ocean size, but the moral lever of ensuring that civilization does not disappear is very real too.